Thanks for stopping by. I've got a story today that I want to tell you that is actually a correction of a previous story that I put on here. Um, as you know, a lot of times mistakes are easily made. And I told the story of Grandma Hoganson and her encounter with the Indians. And this is a story that I recalled that my grandmother told me when I was a little boy. And it turns out that I did not remember all the details as well as I probably should have. And that story is incorrect. And at the time, I'd indicated that was a story that was verbally passed on. I'd never seen it in writing. And thanks to my dad, he actually sent me a copy of Great Grandmother Ash. This is Ellen Matilda Ash, and she is my great great grandmother. So Grandma Lewis, her mother was great Grandma Hoganson, and then great Grandma Hoganson's mother, it was actually Ellen Matilda Ash Nelson. So this is actually my great great grandmother. And this is her story. And my dad actually was able to find the history of Ellen Matilda Ash Nelson and sent me a copy of that. And some of you may have also got a CD with some of her stories on as well. But so what I wanted to do today was correct the record. And I'm actually going to tell this story in her own words. But let's give a little background and a little history here first. Ellen was born in England, and her parents joined the church, and they actually sailed, and I'm going to leave some of this out because I'm going to come back and talk about Great Grandma Ash in another time, but I wanted to at least get this story straight. She actually walked with a handcart to the Zion, came into Utah. Back in the 1800s, and actually tells stories of watching the granite being rolled down State Street to help build the temple. So she's had quite an interesting life. Now, Great Grandma Ash Nelson's father was a gunsmith, and for a long time he was the only gunsmith in Cache Valley. They eventually settled there, and when Great Grandma Ash was about, I think about 9 years old, her mother died, and this was quite a shock. She was the oldest of the children, and she was the one who was responsible for basically taking care of the family. She had little brothers and sisters, and basically took over. This was not something that she wanted to do. Said her father would go off to his place of business, making guns and repairing guns, and she would be expected to stay home and take care of the home, clean up, and do that. She said as a little girl, she would wait until her father got down the street where she couldn't see him anymore, and then she would run off and play until the time when he was about to come home, and she said she would leave early to go in the house, straighten up a few things, maybe make some quick biscuits and make it look like she'd been there working all day. So I kind of got a kick out of that. And in her writing, she admitted to doing that quite often. The fact that he was the only gunsmith around, of course, this was his livelihood, never became incredibly wealthy by it, but the guns were very important. And that plays a part in this story. So what I'd like to do is correct the record. This is the story of great-great-grandma Ellen Matilda Ash Nelson and the encounter she had with the Indian. So I'm going to read that to you in her own words. And of course, just when I want to get started, the computer dies on me. Here we go. Okay, so, and this is quite a record, and this is the only story I'm going to share with you today, but we're going to come back and we're going to talk about her in a couple weeks because she's got some incredible stories that she had to tell. So, they are now, her mother has passed away. They are living up in Cache Valley, and I actually had the address. I want to say it's on 2nd Street, but anyway, it's up in the Logan area. And she's telling about her being home after her mother had passed away as a little girl, and her father was at work and she was at home. Now, before we go on, let's talk about one thing. She talks in here about the latch string on the door. And the way that I envision this is that there was a latch internally to the door of the cabin where they were living. And there would be a string that would go through the outside, and you would pull that string, it would lift the latch, and then the door would open. That's how I envision this in my mind. So that becomes part of the story. So I'm just going to read this in her own words, and I hope you enjoy this. The Indians were numerous in those days, and this is again in the Cache Valley, the Logan area. One came in contact with them almost daily. One day, when I was alone in the house, I saw a big Indian coming. I did not want to be bothered with him, as they were always begging, and we did not have much to give. I pulled the latch string in and hid under the table. The door did not fit well. He lifted it up a little bit and came in. So he didn't need the lock anyway. He was able to kind of break in through the house. Father had a workbench in one corner of the kitchen. The Indian examined several guns and decided on the one he wanted and started to go away with it. I knew Father could not afford to lose a good gun, and so I yelled, "You leave that gun alone!" He put the gun down and ran out. He hurried out, is what she wrote here, never looking to see who had spoken. That was something that I think was very brave of great-grandma Ellen, and I think as we look at some of the other stories of her life, you'll see what an incredible woman this was. We'll cover that in the coming weeks, but I just wanted to set the record straight. I think there's a good lesson here about how we sometimes forget things as time goes on. I'm sure Grandma Lewis, when she told me this story, told it that way. But over the years, my memory of it was altered and a little bit twisted up. And so I changed the place and the circumstance, or not the place, I changed the person and the circumstances. But again, a wonderful story. I'm grateful that it was shared, and I'm very grateful that great-grandma Ellen, Matilda, Ash Nelson recorded her stories that we'll talk about in the coming weeks. So again, thanks for coming by. Glad I could set the record straight, and we'll see you next time.